fellow remarkable women, and welcome to this week's wrap, taking you through the top stories for women throughout the week. Today we're talking about that double glazed glass ceiling in startups, and we revisit that iconic misogyny speech. Let's get you all wrapped up. The latest reporting is out by AWS and Think and Grow, and it confirms some frustrating news. The glass ceiling in the startup sector seems to be double glazed. Women are underrepresented in executive roles, and for those women who are founders, they are only managing to raise a sliver of the funding in comparison to their male counterparts. The report, that is based on the salary analysis of 1,000 individuals working across 63 venture capital-backed Australian startups, found that Australian female founders have only raised $3 million in funding, while male-led startups have raised over $50 million. Not only that, but women are underrepresented in senior leadership positions, instead taking up the majority of lower-level positions. In fact, the more money a startup raises, the less likely women are to be hired in leadership positions. Women, however, did make up the majority of the more traditional, from a bias perspective, areas such as HR, marketing, customer service, and office managers. As someone who comes from the startup sector myself, as some of you may know, having founded 2 businesses of my own, I know and I see and I hear this all too often. Language like, we need to find the right man for the job, we need to hire a gun business development guy, gets thrown around all too often. And when this goes unchecked, the vision that is set in people's minds, the team and key decision makers, is that the right person for the job is, well, surprise, surprise, a guy. Here's the thing, without traditional HR protections that normally exist in big business, such rampant and obvious bias often goes unchecked. And in fact, those who do notice it will too often let it go by the wayside. Why? They're either too afraid to say anything, they've got bigger fish to fry, or they don't want to ruffle any feathers. I've seen and heard about the men's clubs, and I've heard of women being told not to approach certain contacts as a man would actually be better suited. I know, can you believe it? And I've seen women go on completely ignored, talked over, and have their projects entirely manhandled. Essentially, thanks for all your initial thoughts, honey, but I've got it from here. Such behaviour not only sets the tone for the entire business, but it makes the problem even worse, all too often making women feel that they would be better off retreating and picking a different battle. All too often that means a different business, or worse, opting out of the startup sector altogether, thinking that it's just not for them. This is not okay. And so to all the incredible women and men watching this, watch out for bias and sexism in the workplace. And yes, even your brand new startup, because it can happen anywhere. Whenever someone says we need to hire a guy, call it out. Or better still, shout it out. Say, or a woman. You'll likely shock that person into the kind of appropriate behaviour that a leader should have been practicing in any case. One small action can cast a very long and powerful ripple effect towards change. Doing the right thing and watching out for everybody isn't just ethical, but there are commercial wins for all. Just take a look at 2 of Australia's startup darlings, Canva and Airwallex, both unicorns and both led by female founders, Melanie Perkins of Canva and Lucy Liu of Airwallex. Now, on to our next story. Remember this speech?
I say to the Leader of the Opposition, I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
Well, it seems those iconic words were not just heard by Australians, but by Obama's White House team, time and time again. Ben Rhodes, Obama's former Deputy Security Advisor, recently commented on a podcast, Irrational Fear, that whenever we were really annoyed with Tony Abbott, we would watch the video of that speech by Julia Gillard, adding, that speech got watched a lot, let's just put it that way, seemingly indicating that the annoyance was a regular thing. So we will leave you with more footage from one of the most unforgettable moments in Australian television history. Until next time.
The Leader of the Opposition says that people who hold sexist views and who are misogynists are not appropriate for high office. Well, I hope the Leader of the Opposition has got a piece of paper and he is writing out his resignation. Because if he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives, he needs a mirror. He has said, and I quote, "If it's true, Stavros, that men have more power, generally speaking, than women, is that a bad thing?" And then a discussion ensues and another person being interviewed says, "I want my daughter to have as much opportunity as my son." To which the Leader of the Opposition says, "Yeah, I completely agree, but what if men are by physiology or temperament more adapted to exercise authority or to issue command?" And then, of course, it goes on. I was very offended personally when the Leader of the Opposition, as Minister for Health, said, and I quote, "Abortion is the easy way out." I was also very offended on behalf of the women of Australia when, in the course of this carbon pricing campaign, the Leader of the Opposition said, when the housewives of Australia need to do what the housewives of Australia need to understand as they do the ironing. Thank you for that painting of women's roles in modern Australia. And then, of course, I was offended too by the sexism, by the misogyny of the Leader of the Opposition catcalling across this table at me as I sit here as Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister wants to, politically speaking, make an honest woman of herself, something that would never have been said to any man sitting in this chair. When the Leader of the Opposition stood next to a sign that described me as a man's bitch, I was offended by those things. Misogyny, sexism, every day from this Leader of the Opposition. Every day, in every way, across the time the Leader of the Opposition has sat in that chair and I've sat in this chair, that is all we have heard from him.